Might be hard to find some, but don't you shed a tear. Check out the Purple Rock Podcast, and this is what you'll hear. John will make some dumb jokes, and he likes to yell and curse. And if they're not available, the backup hosts are so much worse. We'll spend the whole time being jerks and telling you you're wrong. And so we got this other jerk to sing you our theme song. It's the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor Podcast. I am your host, Matt, and with me this Thanksgiving is Mark. Say hi, Mark.
Hey, guys.
That wasn't hi, Mark. You failed that first test.
At least Rob and Sandra didn't give it to me.
Yeah, well, if you had, you would have lost your vote. You just heard another theme song that was recorded by Mike Hirsch. That was the one that he recorded before the merge, before everything started to suck. So if you were wondering why we didn't use the doom and gloom one that he had last week, it's because we wanted to show off the work that he did this time.
I still think that other one could work, just tweak a few words.
Yeah, no, honestly, he does good work. So
yeah, it's great. I love it. Nice work, Mike.
Yeah, good work, Mike. Okay. And it's fitting that Mike recorded the theme song before a podcast hosted by Matt and Mark. Just nailing these 4-letter M names. So one thing I wanted to lead off talking about is basically kind of the same thing that was discussed last week, which is we're now 2 weeks after the merge episodes. And I don't know about you, but I have been approaching the season since then with what I can only describe as a great deal of ambivalence. The ability to kind of care about this cast has left me. And so a cast that I was very high on before the merge, I don't hate them anymore. That has, well, with the exception of Dan. But most of them, I don't hate them anymore. That has kind of passed. And instead, I just kind of watch them and I don't care about them, with the exception of Janet. And so I find myself just not able to get into the episode. And I'm curious what you're feeling a couple weeks out now.
I care so much that I still have not watched last week's episode.
Okay.
I pieced out, and I probably would have pieced out of this one if we weren't recording this podcast. It rubbed me the wrong way so much, but I have to say I'm getting a little bit of karma in our boot outs. These last 3 people.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of people that we were the maddest at afterwards. Obviously, Dan's still around, but, if you lined up the usual suspects as to people that had kind of, made us so mad in that moment, these 3 would have been near the top of the list.
And it's a shame that it's not satisfying to see them go. It's just like, okay, good, can we move on? But we can't because a certain someone is still there and getting speaking time.
Yeah, and that's why I describe it with ambivalence, because even though we are seeing, a lot of the people that I would like to see go home, I'm not deriving an inordinate amount of pleasure from that like I normally would when, some players I don't like go home. Instead, I just kind of find myself shrugging and moving on. Like, I actually thought last night's episode I was very bored during it. And I don't think it's because it was a boring episode. I think it's because I don't have that connection to the season anymore, because the show lost me so thoroughly with not only what happened during the merge episodes, but also the show's response since then. Like you mentioned, Dan still gets speaking time because the show doesn't realize it did anything wrong. It didn't handle this right. And that's probably the biggest problem in going forward and getting into it. It's the fact the show can't even realize what it did wrong in order to correct itself.
It's such a shame. And I mean, I'm still disappointed in the instigators of the incident, Missy and Elizabeth. And since she was voted out and she had her day after video, and just from meeting her in person, I feel like I gave her a little bit too much heat early on, but it doesn't excuse the actions, and I'm still disappointed in her. But bygones are bygones. Elizabeth fucked up a lot worse, and so I was actually very pleased to see her go in this vote. But yeah, this
Oh, well,
episode...
especially considering the alternative was Janet, and that I really didn't
Oh my
want to
God,
see.
that was a very tense minute for a
Yeah,
second there.
I definitely yelled out in my apartment when I saw that one Janet vote because I thought, I was like, oh, crap, that's it. This is the end of the line.
If that had come to pass, I probably would have bailed on you, sorry.
That's okay. I could have carried this by myself. You would have had the Matt and Robot Matt podcast, which, I think the people would have dug. No, I'm joking.
But no, I honestly, you may not be able to call it a boring episode, but I will. Like, I was literally checked out until about 8:52, like halfway through Tribal.
I did call it a boring episode. I was checked out too. And what I'm saying is, like, I don't think I would have thought it was boring if I wasn't so emotionally disconnected from the season and the cast.
Yeah. And it's a lot, sorry, it's a big part of that, but it's also a big part of, this was a weird episode. There were some very curious editing choices and scheduling.
Well,
like,
we'll get into that a bit. Because
I know. It's a 20-person season. I expected it to be a little bit more interesting than where we're at right now. And I don't know how much of that is my disconnection, like I really don't care, and how much of it is their fault, but I think Andy had a good tweet that said this could have been an all-time great season had the merge episode not happened.
Yeah, and I think that's generally been the feeling that a lot of people have had, that just, it's so poisoned the water that, that nothing that has come since we care about, because we were very high on this cast, and we were very high on a lot of people that are remaining in this final 8, and there'd be a lot of potential left here. There was a successful idol play last night, and I still find myself kind of shrugging my shoulder.
But do we have a lot of good people? Like, I feel this is like where we were in San Juan del Sur at this point, where they kept knocking out the interesting characters, and I don't see a Natalie here. Tommy is not Natalie Anderson.
Well, Tommy's more like John Mish.
That's
in
true.
San Juan del Sur.
That would have been pretty sad.
I mean, John Mish controlled a lot of that post merge until Natalie knocked him off. So maybe he has something similar. In terms of
Please
likability,
tell me there's hope for Karishma.
right. I mean, so Janet obviously has that type of likability. I mean, we stand a legend here. Before the merge, Elaine would have been right there too. And while the shine on her was taken off, I don't think it was taken off to the extent that it was a lot of the other people that kind of voted with Dan at the merge, because they just ignored anything she had to say about the issue. So, and then Lauren, and even if you don't like Tommy, he's still playing actively. He's still controlling votes. Ditto Lauren.
Lauren had a good episode.
100%. I mean, I actually think that her challenge and her ability to, make it happen was actually very impressive. Because knowing that it's a food challenge, it's a different calculus than just who could win this challenge. It's, well, who can I make feel safe enough that they'll sit out and eat? Mm-hmm. And she was able to convince 2/3 of the tribe of that.
Which is insane.
Yeah, it is.
I'm very impressed that she was able to do that, and B, got it right.
Yeah, 100%. And it was probably a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy where, because she knew who she thought was most likely to compete, she could convince everyone else, well, it'll be one of them. They'll compete and we'll just vote out one of those 3. And she knew, and she probably knew that Karishma would never win. So.
Right.
I thought her challenge was very interesting, and I was going to talk about it later, but why don't we just talk about it now since we're here? Because it's not something that you normally see in Survivor, but it also requires Survivor-type skills. And that's kind of where I've liked Island of the Idols, where it asks you to do something that is similar to Survivor, but that you probably would never do in the actual game. But now you're using similar skills to what you would do in the game to try to get an advantage. And I like that more than just kind of like following a map for an advantage.
Yeah, I think Island of the Idols has worked best, A, when Sandra and Rob get to talk, and B, when it's slightly adjacent to Survivor skills and not directly parallel.
Yes.
Like, the making fire on the premiere, that was stupid.
Because there was no way they could ever win, so it was a dumb challenge. It was a bad choice.
in the advantage that Jamal made, hey, it worked and it's very entertaining in this episode, but it was still like not the most successful play in the in the thick of things.
I mean, it also just seemed like the one time that you find something in Survivor and it's bad for you, like never has that happened before. That's a bad lesson. It just, it's not one that Survivor teaches you.
And they've been stretching with these lessons for a while.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that one in particular was, like...
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like, what is Survivor producers, what do they want to encourage? They want to encourage you to look for idols. They want to encourage you to find stuff and use the advantages they put in the game. That's why they put them in the game. So by putting in a negative advantage, that actually would teach people the opposite. That would teach people not to try to find advantages, which is, again, the exact opposite of what they want. So it's not just
like
a bad...
putting in a positive edit on a negative event.
Well, yeah, there's that.
Not gonna let it go.
No, you shouldn't, because I mean, it's the big problem with the season. It's what makes it so hard to invest in what's happening in these episodes is the fact that this is a pall hanging over the season. And if the show had realized what had happened in the editing room, at least, they could have cut out Dan. They could have, shown that the repercussions were more. But I think John had a good point last week in that I think a lot of the contestants have put it behind them too. Because for them, it's, you can probably compartmentalize a bit better because you're trying to do everything in the game and you're just so focused that it's not seeping out all the time.
Yeah. I have a feeling it might come up later, but we can get to that.
I actually feel like it might too. But again, yeah, you're right. We can get to that. But this is, I thought this was a very successful Island of the Idols challenge. It's, it made me kind of really like the format, which I've been liking all season, mainly because Rob and Sandra are hilarious.
And their little chicken friend, that was amazing.
Oh, yeah. What was his name? Shithead or something? Bitch, that was it. So, bitch. Biting Sandra's finger was one of the highlights of the episode.
I don't get why that's not part of the secret scenes, or at least like a mini YouTube series. Come on, guys.
Yeah, like Sandra and the chicken.
Yep.
Yeah,
Bitch and the papaya, the adventures.
That'd be good. But yeah, no, so I actually thought that Lauren's ability to kind of make that challenge count was very impressive and something that normally I would be much more appreciative of and admiring of, and instead now I have this kind of like cold remove where I'm like, yeah, that was good. I don't care. I mean, honestly, of everyone that's not Dan in the game, Lauren's, you talked about your reaction to Missy and Elizabeth, and I had a similar reaction in the moment, and I kind of softened a bit on Missy over time. I feel like while I think she went too far, there are ways to kind of justify her reaction. Elizabeth was the one that pissed me off the most. But over time, Lauren was the one that had like kind of moved to number 2 actually for me, because I feel that she knew more than she was letting on, and that she was the one who really manipulated this situation to be about the game rather than about what was actually happening to people and what was harming people.
I was just about to bring that up in terms of she was supposed to be praised in this episode for her great read of people, and yet she's one of the instigators of this whole incident by twisting it around and trying to make it a game advantage and then attacking people on Twitter afterwards. Like, how am I supposed to, bow before the great strategic genius of Lauren when all this other extracurricular stuff is going on?
Yeah, I mean, right. And it's the type of thing where I do think that she knew that the complaints about Dan were legit. I think that Kelly told her about them very early on, and I think that she had the same complaints very early on in the game. And so when you have Missy coming to her, and I am sure that they told her at some point that the target had changed to Dan, Lauren had a decision there where she could have said, well, they're still coming after Missy, or she could have said, if I continue to convince Missy they were aiming at you, then I can make this about the game, and we can vote off someone that I want to vote off for the game. And she was able to. So I really think that Lauren and Tommy were the ones who made the decision that moved it into a game decision, because they were the ones who told Missy, and they're the ones who kind of elevated the I want to keep Missy over the potential to vote out Dan because they thought they could work with her,
and yet they voted her out.
Right, and yet they
the
voted
very
her out the
next
next episode.
So they did that, and then these other two ruined their reputations for what, an extra $5,000 or $10,000? It's not worth it.
Yeah,
it's really not worth it.
Yeah, and so that's where, like, you know, Lauren's right. Maybe she did read the situation correctly, but then her judgment upon how to act upon it is one of the most lacking that we've seen here. And it's, you know, there's just so little remorse shown or even consideration of what happened. You know, for the viewing audience, it's still on our mind weeks later, but it seems that for the people in the game, it's already forgotten.
It's because it's such a manipulating environment. Like,
Yeah.
you think about it, you're trapped on an island, only thinking about the game. This just game of manipulation, and, you know, it warps your brain, you're starving. There's a lot of factors that go into why these people would do that.
Oh, 100%.
It doesn't necessarily excuse the actions, but it's completely understandable, which is why it's incumbent on the people who are eating to make the decision.
Right, exactly. And I mean, right. And I don't think you're going to hear anything different from, you know, us than what you've heard the past 2 weeks, that, you know, the biggest part of the blame falls on production for not stepping in and doing something earlier. But I did have a question, which, you know, because this is hanging over the season and because, you know, at least I feel this detachment, you raised the point, and I think it's a really good question of, what is the best case scenario for the end game, considering how we're feeling right now?
I mean, the best case is to get, I don't even know, get the bad blood out. I mean, I've been predicting Dan for weeks, and I want him to go, and there's very few scenarios for that to happen before the end of the game, which is why I think this might come up later. But I don't even know what the best case scenario for the end game is. Get Dan out, get Tommy out, get Lauren out, and then it's like a go-to-thon. And then it's just an entertaining reality show like any other competition, like a Big Brother or something.
Sure.
So
I mean,
have, like,
you know,
Nora
you'd still have
Karishma
Janet in there.
Dean.
You'd still have Elaine in there. But Nora, Karishma, Dean, I don't think any of them are winning. You know, and so, I mean, you know, I think the easy answer to this is Janet wins. I think, you know, like, Janet winning would be, you know, the easy, you know, I guess most plausible best case scenario, because
And then it would be very much like San Juan in that, like, the one righteous person has their revenge, takes out everybody else, and just wins by default after that. So.
Right, but Natalie wasn't righteous on a moral basis. You know, she just she was just like playing the game and avenging her former alliance mate.
I'm just trying to think of a good analogy here.
No, I mean, it would kind of apply, you know, if Janet, because I mean, Janet has seemed to kind of fallen off the threat radar. She's not being considered right now. There are other people in front of her. There are people that are being targeted. So, you know, at the moment, I don't think that she's in danger, and I really hope that's not a jinx. But I genuinely don't think that. I mean, and part of that is, unfortunately, because she reestablished a relationship with Dan, and Dan's in so tight with the, in the power seat, that Janet is protected by him, which is awful, because, you know, we don't want, you know, even, you know, anything, you know, like, Dan is the person that shouldn't even be here, and to be even slightly protecting someone who we think, who we do want around is like disquieting, and just kind of talks to the messiness of this entire post-merge.
I'm so glad I didn't have to watch that scene of her bowing down to him or whatever it was.
It wasn't really bowing down. It was more just kind of like, I mean, like, she didn't apologize, which was the good thing.
That's good.
But she did, but it was a, like, let's move together again. Move forward together again. But, you know, I mean, aside from Janet, you know, like, I don't even think the best case would be, like, a super exciting, you know, thing, though that could help. But, you know, it would be interesting if the people that are perceived as goats could just rise up and vote people out, do a Markakis, you know, where everyone that was like, oh, well, those people are on the bottom, they just like, well, there's more of us, so we'll vote you out. And then they took over.
The Purple Rocks, and Boston Rob, did anything memorable come out of Marquesas
No,
anymore?
no. But what I'm saying is, like, even if this ended exciting, it's not going to be it's not going to be exciting because of
Yeah.
the people that we would want to see win. It's going to be, it's going to be because some of the people that are players that are left will do something to win, to knock off one of the other players. But you're right. I mean, I mean, I don't even know if that could save it. But there was one moment of excitement this episode, and that was Tribal Council. So we should probably talk about that. Normally we lead off with that, and now we're 20 minutes in and we haven't mentioned it yet. Karishma successfully played her idol. And then there was a tie vote with one apiece between Elizabeth and Janet. And like we both mentioned, I really thought Janet was going home for a second there.
Oh yeah, it was very terrifying, and I still want to know who voted Janet. I know people were speculating that it was either Karishma or Dan. I don't know. I'm still curious to know about that. But
so Wikipedia, and I don't know how they get this information. In fact, I would be very interested to see how they got this information, if it's legit or not. But Wikipedia has Dan as the Elizabeth vote and Karishma as the Janet vote. I kind of thought that Karishma had voted Janet because that was the plan she was told by Dan, which says a lot about Karishma, that even when she thinks they're voting her out, she's still kind of following this plan of the people she thinks that are voting her out. And then on revote, I mean, but then and then some other people speculated that Karishma voted for Elizabeth and Elizabeth voted for Janet. I mean, I could see it a lot, it's really unclear to me what happened there and why, and if there was an intended vote split like there had been earlier in the episode, why more votes weren't going to Elizabeth.
I did think the editing in Tribal was really good, because the minute that she played her idol, the music cut out and this tension rose, and I was so excited that I had the possibility to watch Dan get voted out. And then that Janet vote came out, and I was extremely nervous and yelling at my screen. So there was a lot of ups and downs. So I think they edited that really well.
No, I mean, I agree. That was that was a very tense moment. I mean, I don't know why they didn't vote. Why she didn't vote Dan. I don't know why she would take the name that was given to her by Dan, that she was so mad that she was being told to vote this person.
Why do people listen to him? And why? Okay, if she hates the old Lyro, why would she vote with them? So that's why I think that she might have voted Elizabeth. But also she was working with Elizabeth. I don't know. I can't keep track anymore. These alliances make no sense. But at Tribal, it was karmic justice that the entire episode was built around Lauren working to get an idol. Yeah. And then she played it and wasted it. So that was great.
Well, even though it's wasted, I also think it's the correct play there. If you know that almost all the votes are canceling out, you play an idol just in case the one vote's coming to you.
Oh yeah, I completely get it from a gameplay standpoint. I'm just a bitter asshole right now, and anybody.
No. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying, I think that's one of those situations where the idol is technically a waste and played entirely correctly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So I mean, so I think it's one of the things that I think was interesting is if you evaluate kind of the position of the tribe and the alliances. I think Tommy, Lauren, and Dan are in an alliance, and Dean. So I think those four are the main part of the alliance. And then Janet and Elaine are folded in, and maybe they're above Dean, maybe they're below him. But I think the main people are Tommy, Lauren, and Dan. And so everything's kind of based around that. And then you have Nora, who's oblivious and thinks that she's probably higher in that pecking order than she is. And then Karishma, who is on the bottom, knows she's on the bottom, but also doesn't really have any bonds with anyone else that is even kind of on the outside. Elaine kind of on the outside, kind of on the inside. Janet kind of on the outside, kind of on the inside. Elizabeth this episode mostly on the outside, but Karishma had bonds with none of these people. And so when we're evaluating her decisions, we have to realize that she showed a difficulty of working with people that she didn't have bonds with early on. And then when she did find people that she had bonds with, all of them got voted out. She had bonds with Kelly and Jamal, and they got voted out. And then, and And so I think like when we're looking at Karishma, it's like why would Karishma vote Janet? Karishma, I don't think has people that she sees as natural allies, and she rails against being told who to vote for, and she says that she's going to talk to who she wants to, but she also doesn't have bonds with anyone else, and so her trying to construct an alliance from the bottom seems to be something that would be really difficult because she doesn't even want to work with the people on the bottom.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, you could see like the people that are kind of on the outs, not fully on the outs. I think some of these people are probably more on the ins than others. Are like Janet and Nora, and in this episode Elizabeth and Karishma. But Nora thinks that she's on the in because
And
Nora.
it's going to be great if Crazy Nora immunity wins her way to the end.
I mean, that would be really funny, especially because then she thinks that she'd be like assured of a lot of votes, and she probably wouldn't get any. Because no one really likes her. And then, right, but, I mean, it's just tough because I think everyone kind of sees, they know who the top people are, but they don't really have a really good sense of, like, who the third and fourth people in this, like, Tommy, Laura, and Dan alliance is. And I think a bunch of people think that, like, they're 3 and 4, and a bunch of people think they're 3 and 4, and so they think they're actually sitting a lot better than they probably are.
Which in a normal season would make for a very exciting game because it's so fluid, and that's something that fans ask for all the time.
Yeah.
And yet...
I mean, I also think that, like, it's probably actually already been determined, and it's just that some of the people in the game don't know it. So, because, I mean, normally people would be moving against Tommy and Lauren. They're a very tight pair. People have known this for a while. And yet no one's moving against them because everyone thinks that like they're the third or fourth person in that alliance. So, and that they won't take each other to the end. They'll cut each other at some point near the end so that they'll be at the end with like one of them and Dan. So, or maybe Dean will be there. Speaking of Inspector Dean, he once again, Detective Dean had a striking episode as he sussed out that his fake advantage might not be fake. So he faked a fake of the advantage to play this episode so that people would think that he'd already used the advantage that he thinks is real, that other people probably suspect is fake but might think is real, and so that he will have that in his pocket for final 6. This is some 4D chess that Detective Dean is playing here.
And yet it wasn't even made out of a chessboard. It was made out of a checkers board.
Yeah, well, they're the same
How did
board.
you, like, paint half of a note and then think that people are going to get fooled by it? Maybe because it's far away?
Yeah, probably because,
light,
no one's actually looking at it. He just has to hand it to Probst. No one really... They've already seen it, so they see what they want to see. One of those type of things.
But when he says it's not an advantage, then that's it. Your game's up. Why are you going to play it again?
Well,
You're
because that was the fake of the fake. Now no one. It's the secret triple reverse. No, I mean it's silly. It's
of course. No, I'm saying it's crazy.
Yeah, it's the type of thing where I almost want Andy on here so he could devote 15 minutes to railing about it, but I'm too tired to take that time. But I actually
it's more entertaining. Like, I don't want to waste 15 minutes of brain power to think about it because it's dumb. These people are dumb. They're making a lot of dumb moves, and the show doesn't know how to edit around that. So instead, they took a bunch of flashbacks. I don't know. That was weird. We can get into editing later.
Sure. I mean, because there was one other thing about Dean that I wanted to talk about, which was that early on in the episode, he was talking about the goat army, and it's just kind of cute that Dean doesn't think he's a goat, because Dean's definitely a goat, and he doesn't realize it, which is typical for good old oblivious Dean. But, he's worried about, like, the goats rising up and voting him and Tommy out. And it's just, like, it's just such an old-fashioned view about, like, what makes someone threatening in Survivor, that he's like, well, obviously the muscular men are threatening when, like, Dean hasn't won shit.
No. And I think there was visual evidence that he doesn't do anything here.
Yeah, I mean...
Which is great. The show is just dunking on him, and they have since, the second episode when he came stumbling out to the water?
Yes. No, yeah. Dean's a punching bag, and he doesn't realize it, and it's fun to see. I mean, now Aaron, he was an immunity threat. But Aaron's gone. Tommy and Dean have not won a single immunity. They are not immunity threats. Now, Tommy is a threat because he's controlling the game. Dean's not controlling the game. Dean latched on to Tommy, late because, I guess they broed down at the merge feast or something.
Yeah, I think they had a discussion about sports, and Dean thinks he's superior because he's a white man with muscles. Let's be real. It's a very old school Survivor mentality.
And he was apparently like a decent high school basketball player before he was too short to go on and play anywhere else. No, I mean, like, no offense to the shorties, I'm short, but he's stuck in this like weird mentality that just makes him very easy to be dunked on. And yet, like, he's so oblivious to the game. Yeah, but he's so oblivious to the game that he doesn't even realize what's happening to him. So, and the thing is, like, there's a lot of people on the bottom that are, you talked about some people that are not playing good games. I think there are people that are playing good games. I think Tommy and Lauren are playing good games. I think Elaine has done a good job of folding back in when people identified her very early on as a threat because of how likable she is. She's done a good job of being able to kind of go with the flow of the game and fold back in. And I think similarly, Janet has done a good job of being able to get back into a less precarious place after being a very obvious target. I don't know what Dan is doing. I don't know what his game is. There's some suggestion that he's not even playing to win. He's playing to, like, set up a win for someone else, but also
I think he admitted that in pre-game press.
Right. So. I didn't read the pre-game press, but also fuck Dan. I don't give a shit what Dan's playing.
Right. Of course.
Assaulting people should disqualify you from being considered playing a good game. Just bar none. Karishma's game we talked about earlier, I find it very confusing because it's very reliant upon her being willing to play with certain people, but also people being willing to play with her. And she's not been able to find that two-way road except with a few people, and they got all voted out. She did a good job playing the idol this week. There was apparently some hesitance to do that, but she identified that she was the correct target. But, I don't think that Karishma is ever going to organize a vote. Do you?
No, absolutely not. She's going to latch onto someone else's vote and, I don't know, try to steer it from there. But she needs something as a baseline because right now no one really wants to work with her.
Right.
Except for Elizabeth, who she just voted out.
Right. And I don't think Elizabeth even really wanted to work with her. I think Elizabeth would have been happy to sacrifice her to get one step further. Mm-hmm. And then Nora is oblivious to pretty much any of the undercurrents of anything that's happening.
Do you think she's in the loop at all? Because she's voting the right way.
People are telling her where to vote, and I think and I think that they want to keep her around because she will vote where they tell her to vote. Nora is a good goat. Like Karishma's a bad goat because she's going to do stuff like when you tell her where to vote, she's going to go talk to everyone to make sure that what you're saying is true. I don't think Nora does that. I think if you tell Nora this is the vote, she's going to take that as gospel and just do that. So you can keep Nora in the loop, and she's going to keep doing what you want.
That's true. So what does that make Dean the oblivious goat?
Right, because Dean's doing the same thing. You tell, until Dean tries to, the question is would Nora try to organize a vote against Tommy and Lauren? Maybe. Would Dean try to organize a vote against them? Again, unlikely, but maybe. And so on that basis, they're both pretty good goats because they'll do what they're told and they both think that they're deep in the loop.
So do we think that Elaine is a goat in wolf's clothing? Because you mentioned that she was doing a good job pulling back, but do you think she's doing too good a job?
No, because I think Elaine could win.
Okay.
I do think that if Elaine got to the end, she could win. Because she's so likable, because she has a lot of people that she worked with on the jury. Now, some of those people might be mad that she betrayed them, but it also might be a situation where they're like, hey, you played a good game type of thing. There are people on the jury that have been warning about Elaine winning since the beginning, which kind of reminds me of Philippines when people were warning about Denise winning since the very beginning. It's one of those things where there are certain there are certain people where if you see them at the end, you might just vote to reward them because you like them so much and you knew that they were a threat for so long that it actually did take good gameplay to get by. Like, I also think that Elaine would act, if she saw her game in jeopardy, because I think she has the ability to see when her game is in jeopardy. I don't think she can see multiple moves ahead, but she can read if you're telling her that she's going to be the target.
Yeah, which was the whole first episode.
Right, exactly. So so I don't think Elaine is a goat. I just think that she's a, sidelined potential, winner type of person. So,
okay, that makes sense. I'll put her in my playing well list.
I mean, I don't know if she's playing well. I just don't think that she's playing poorly, and I don't think that she's a goat. Right? Yeah. I mean, the problem is if you look at this cast, it's hard to identify people that you're like, oh yeah, they could definitely win. Yeah. Tommy's obviously the lead one. I would normally say Lauren, but I just not getting that sense from the edit. I mean, Elaine could, she's been under-edited if she does, but she could. Maybe Janet? I don't know. But I think that's where the list ends.
Yeah. It's maybe, I don't know.
And most of that percentage goes to Tommy, honestly.
But it's those four, because the other four, we're down to 8, right?
Yeah.
The other 4 are goats, completely.
Right. And even if Dan has power, he's not going to win. His power is not the ability to win. It's the power to kind of steer decisions. There's not been many people that play like Dan. But again, fuck him because he's an asshole.
Exactly.
And
I never thought I'd be thankful. I never thought I would ask for Edge of Extinction to come back, but
yeah, it would have been great.
Never know in the future.
Yeah. So, you mentioned something about the editing. Do you want to touch on that briefly?
I guess it was just weird to me. I didn't watch last week. I don't know how the show handled the immediate aftermath of everything, but it seemed like they were really struggling to come up with content for this episode. The entire episode hinged around this immunity challenge. That's all they talked about for 2 days. The first 15 minutes of the episode was basically entirely flashbacks, be it Lauren explaining people's immunity aptitude, or flashing back to earlier events in the season, or flashing back to things that happened in other seasons. It's almost like they didn't even have 43 minutes of content to make an episode out of, and so they really struggled, and I think it showed. So, I think the show may not know what to do with this cast because they keep voting out the charismatic players, unfortunately.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that the flashbacks to the past immunities, they served a point to kind of show that she was correct in her thinking about a lot of these things. It's oh yeah, Lauren's on the ball because she correctly remembers this thing or she does that. And I think being able to visually illustrate that as she's talking is good. Yeah. I want that. I do think that this episode was struggling for content. A lot of this episode was turned over to the Lauren advantage, and that was because I just don't think that much else is going on right now. I don't think that there's a lot of alternate plans. I don't think that there's a lot of schemes to try to upend the game at this point. Maybe that will change, but I think that everything is just kind of proceeding apace for now. So,
which is an unfortunate analogy to the show itself.
Right, exactly. So, we don't need to go overly long. Let's just get into predictions.
So I feel like I have to stay true to my protest prediction of Dan every week.
Okay.
But the only way I see that happening in the next episode is if something truly egregious happens where someone brings their family member to the family visit and they're particularly attractive and Dan tries to touch them and then he's ejected. That would be horrifying, but also great because I wouldn't have to look at Dan anymore.
Jeez, yeah.
That said, I really have no desire to watch the show, have their sweeping music as his loved one comes out, and Probes talks about the love between father and son, brother and sister, whatever talk show bullshit he spouts, as we try to humanize Dan. So I don't really care what happens next episode. I'm out. And I'm not going to say Dan. I'm going to say, God, who's even left? I'm just going to say Karishma.
Yeah. Your scenario for how Dan would get voted out, I can even imagine how it would happen. You have someone win the loved ones challenge. They get to choose a couple other people to bring with them on a reward. They choose Dan, and then Dan offers like their loved one, like Tommy's like girlfriend, a massage or something like that.
That's exactly what I was thinking about.
And
he mentioned his girlfriend. We've gotten hints from some people who were voted out that the issue will be addressed in the future. I'm really hoping that doesn't mean final tribal.
Yeah,
but
that's Jesus. That's a depressing scenario.
It's so depressing, but
especially because like you can imagine it based on what we've seen. Based on what we've seen, that is very realistic. Like like the second you said that, I immediately just, I just came up with the scenario in my mind. And I mean, good God, just, ugh. Well,
it'd be very fitting.
It would be fitting. I almost want to predict that now because it's a good scenario. But what
do you got?
I just think it's, even as realistic as I think it is, I think it's still unlikely. I think Karishma is the most likely person. I think you're right about that. I think that she played an idol successfully. She sent home Elizabeth, which isn't a big deal for them, but I think that a lot of people might look at this as the last easy vote. And so they might take it with Karishma now, and then they'll and then it'll be like, okay, things get serious at 7. So
you know what? If you went with Karishma, we can't be having the same thing. So put me back as Dan.
Okay, you're back as Dan. You got it, Mark.
Worst timeline, darkest timeline.
Yeah. So so hopefully you enjoyed our on the shorter side episode. I'm not stretching this out because I ate a lot tonight and I'm very sleepy and it's not that late. So
let's make the advice segment really short. Go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed, get a good night's sleep. Hopefully you had a good Thanksgiving or Thursday if you don't celebrate. And if you want to follow us, you can find the website at purplerockpodcast.com. You can follow the show Twitter account at Purple Rock Pod. I am Purple Rock Matt. You are Purple Rock Mark. And I guess this is where we hit the music.
That's it. Happy Thanksgiving.